Hey folks, welcome into the BN Cubs podcast. I'm Brett Taylor. That's Michael Cerami. We are here on Thanksgiving Eve to talk Cubs and baseball and offseason and turkey and gobble gobble. Thanks to Ankin Law, 3126 million, injury law made personal. Thanks, Howard. Hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. And so we've hit that spot. I don't anticipate significant volume of transactions between the next couple days. We're recording on Wednesday, day before Thanksgiving, and Cubs had their first signing of the offseason. Phil Maton, going to be pretty significant addition to the bullpen, first of many perhaps this offseason. I think we'll talk more about that later, but I think we would be surprised if the Cubs didn't make at least one more sort of surefire addition in the bullpen, given the extreme volume of need. But I think that, like most off seasons for the Cubs, the vast majority of the moves are going to be a grab bag of weird, smaller, interesting things from which they'll pick and construct. But to sign a guy to a 2-year significant dollar amount, about $7.5 million annually, something they haven't done since Craig Kimbrell in 2019. So we don't have to go a lot with this because we've written about it extensively. But my main takeaway, other than just really liking the pitcher, is either the Cubs were so excited for this guy that they were like, look, it's going to take 2 years. He had a big breakout last year. We just got to do it. Or philosophically, they're like, you know what? We've missed out on some targets that we've liked over the last 5 years because we don't go to 2 years, even 2 years on these guys. And so, or it's both. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the offseason plays out in that regard.
I do hope it's both. So a couple things. One, I'm going to pat myself on the back for breaking that signing on Friday night while watching Air Force One with Harrison Ford. That is now the third time, because at the deadline when I had Kittredge and Rogers, I was in the movie theater talking to sources via text, breaking the movie theater code to get those stories out. So maybe I need to watch more movies during high trade seasons, because that's when I get all my best scoops done. But immediately
get
following
off my team.
Yeah. Oh, that was good. It took me a second.
I was like, it's going to click. It's going to click.
Yeah. I was like, oh, he's doing a weird bit here. I don't follow it. Now I gotcha. You're just, so old. You probably saw that movie in theaters. I was basically a child. So
I'm an extra in that film.
Oh, do you know that's a dream of mine?
To be an extra?
Just in any movie at any point for any type of, the actual dream, by the way, is to be killed in a horror movie. I want to be a victim in a horror movie. Do
you have a specific way you want to go?
No, but I would like it to be like sort of slashery and practical effectsy. So they have to make like a mold of my face and that whole thing. That is literally like, if I can, if I get one wish, that would be it. Especially now the Cubs have won the World Series. So
yeah. All right.
Wait, but so here's the point. Sorry, everybody. Is that they are still in on other top free agent relievers. That was something I put out there the following day, which I had heard as well. And that's exciting and interesting. But to your point, I hope the Cubs are not abandoning their philosophical approach to bullpen building, because they are pretty good at it. Last year made me a believer again. I mean, they've done it in the past. It's not always as successful as it was last season. With, Caleb Thielbar, Drew Pomeranz, Brad Keller, and a whole host of others. But I do hope that what they are learning is that, they can attack this from both ends. Excuse me. So they can go out and get guys like Maton and maybe someone else interesting like Ryan Helsley, who's been a recent rumor. But also still go out and pepper the field for all of those upside candidates. And then maybe we can be staring at the beginning of what will be a little bit more bullpen dominance for the Cubs, because they're more willing to supplement the top end with these guys. So that's what I hope happens, is that they grab one or two established multi-year guys every year or however appropriate, and also continue to get really aggressive. And I'm not wrong about this, right? There's no reason to believe signing a guy like Phil Maton or another significant free agent reliever should prevent them from doing the Brad Kellers of the world, right? Those are minor league deals. There's no overlapping cost or concern there.
No, I mean, the cost would be you're creating less opportunity for both to make your place look desirable, for guys to want to sign. Because it's like, there aren't that many slots. Yeah. And then two, in order for Brad Keller to emerge as Brad Keller, he's got to have a lot of opportunities in April and May to really get set, right? And if you have too many places locked in, you just don't have that many opportunities. I suppose I would just add here that unspoken is a little disappointing internally on the relief side the last 3 or 4 years in terms of development.
Yeah.
There was a time 4 or 5 years ago when the clear goal was to get as many optionable young relief arms on the 40-man as possible. Like, it was a clear approach. And I don't want to go through the list and dump on guys, but you can go through the additions, and a lot have just not worked out. And that's a little bit the nature of relief pitching prospects. That's how, there's a volatility there. There's just general player development. Guys flame out. Big leagues is hard. But at the same time, you don't ever really want to go into an offseason where you're like, okay, well, there's one guy on the 40-man roster who's like a surefire part of this bullpen for next year, Daniel Palencia. And even he fits the mold that we've talked about this before of so many guys who've like had a good year or two, and then you assume, okay, well, they got that guy, and then struggles the next year.
But on the flip side to that, because I agree with everything you're saying 100%, but I am reminded that the Cubs acquired Palencia in 2021 in that Andrew Chafin deal along with Greg Deichmann, and took him 4 years to become to deliver 3/4 of an impactful season as a reliever. Maybe there's some guys we're sleeping on that it'll click for. It's not that we were sleeping on Palencia. We all kind of knew that he had stuff, but again, look at Luke Little. Not someone who's worked out yet, but would it be all that surprising if he had a great season? No, it wouldn't.
It'd be very similar to Palencia, right? He was a starter at the lowest levels, but it became clear very early that he's not going to be able to sustain this over full starts. Converts him, comes up to a little bit of success, and then some injuries, and then option in the back. And that was kind of the Palencia story too. And so that's also why I wouldn't run through the list and just dump on the guys, because we know they surprise, that's just how this is. It's more of just I just don't love that we don't even talk about Ethan Roberts, Jack Neely, Luke Little.
Jack Neely's a guy that needs to, I feel like we kind of talked about him a lot.
He had because he had a terrible year. He wasn't even close to getting called up. And that was when he was acquired in the Mark Leiter deal. He was on the cusp, and it was nope. And so I suppose all I'm saying is you want to bring in surefire guys and get that right. And you also want to do the grab bag of lots of options and get a few of them to click and get that right. And you also really want and need some young optionable guys to do well, because they're that portion of the bullpen that you have flexibility with, that you can move guys up and down as you need rest, as you need spot starters. And if you don't have that one, and the Cubs didn't this past year, and I'm trying to think if it burned them much. It didn't really.
No, it didn't. But you were on top of that, and it really opened my eyes. I will give you all the appropriate credit, because I was like, oh boy, they have one optionable reliever, and it's Daniel Palencia or what, you know what I mean? It's it does stink, because it puts you in a bad position if you have doubleheaders
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
they were like, you might like lose a couple games. And I know it doesn't work this way. So you can't isolate it, but like you could end up having to use exhausted relievers that end up blowing a game because you're like, we can't option anybody out. And so these guys are tired and going to get lit up, but that is what it is. So that is something that has, spoken to me, and I'm not going to take credit for remembering this because I didn't until I heard Saad Sharma or Patrick Mooney say it, but Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins, a couple of years ago did say that like the dream is to have an entirely homegrown bullpen. And obviously part of that is so you don't have to go sign guys because sure, great. But a big part of that I do think is the options. And even when you do get guys like Brad Keller or whomever, a lot of times they don't have minor league options remaining. And then you can't even cycle them in and out or, keep them
risk
beyond
losing them, right?
Yeah. And then they get lost in the shuffle or into free agency or whatever. So that does stink. And that is a big part of it. So all things equal, you do want it to be blossoming up through the system. But in the meantime, if they continue trying to hit by throwing a lot of darts and then also taking a couple bigger swings on these surefire guys, you could see them being able to build something big. I think already, if Palencia, these are all big ifs. So I'm not, but this is like where my optimistic brain is if Maton is the guy we think he can be, and I'm following your lead on how to say his last name. I think I was saying Phil Maton before. But if he's the guy we think he can be, and he's like a, relatively impactful 7th or 8th inning arm, if Daniel Palencia is the guy he was last year and in the playoffs, he looked good in the playoffs. He had a little bit of a down, September, I want to say, like there was a couple weeks where he sort of lost his spot a little bit and then he was hurt and I didn't mean to do the air quotes, but it did kind of feel like a little bit of a, okay, let's take a quick break.
Just give him a reset. Yeah.
If he is who he is, and then if the Cubs do go out and get one more guy, which we think they might, that is a pretty great 3 relievers foundation for the back end of your bullpen. And that's excluding anyone who might step up like they did the last year where the 3 guys ended up being, Pomeranz, Thielbar, Keller, and then eventually Kittredge, all guys who you weren't thinking about at the start of the year.
Yeah. I think you would need in that scenario, like Ben Brown to be used in relief.
Did you see he was the Cubs' biggest win probability adder negative last season?
Yeah.
I was like,
I did see that and I thought about it and I'm like, yeah, it kind of makes sense because the games that stand out were the ones where he'd have that inning that lost the whole game. Like he'd have which you can't do this, but he had a 5-inning start and it's like, that's 4 good innings. That other one kind of wrecked the whole game.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess speaking of Ben Brown, rotation versus bullpen, all of these things, we're going to keep coming back to the rotation because that's the spiciest part of the market in which the Cubs are involved. And it occurred to us as we were looking at sort of the latest talking point from Bruce Levine about a Sandy Alcantara trade, which we'll get to in a moment, that it's a pretty good offseason to need a front half starting pitcher, which is very much not always the case in the offseason where you've got some really compelling options in free agency. You've got a really compelling guy coming over from Japan. You've got several interesting guys coming back from Asia. You've got a ton of trade options. You got controllable types. You've got pricier types. And there's also just some interesting, like, Matthew Boyd types that.
Yeah.
That
I was going to say there's like bounce back candidates.
Yeah. If you're right, you can get great value there. And so, I was, thinking about it like, because I was saying to you, I was like, there's really a lot of guys this offseason that if this was the one the Cubs landed on, I'd be like, oh, I dig that. I'm happy. And that's not always the case. And it reminded me a bit, forgive the forcing of a seasonally appropriate reference.
Wait, but you're going to be stuffing this into the conversation?
Stuffing this into the conversation. That's right. Thanksgiving tomorrow, of course. And I was thinking about, what we're having people to our house, going to have a ton of sides. And I was in charge of putting it together. And so like, okay, well then I'm picking all the sides that I like, because whatever, I'm going to want all of them. Right. So it's like 15 different sides and I want like a little bit of each. And it occurred to me, it's not unlike entirely the pitching market where, you know what, if all I could have was the sweet potato casserole, I'd be like, okay, good. And whatever, like you could blindfold me, point to one of these things, like, oh, the mac and cheese, yeah, on it. The Brussels sprouts, I like them. I like them. And so it's a bit like the names.
Here's why Brussels sprouts are undervalued in the current.
If you cook them right, they're really good.
Yeah.
Kids are full of crap. The Brussels sprouts are good.
To be fair, the way of cooking Brussels sprouts right is put them alongside a lot of bacon.
Yeah, bacon like, and oil.
And oil and butter.
A bunch of stuff to make it.
If you cook them right, you mean if I add fat? Yeah. Sure.
If you dunk them in chocolate.
Right. Then they're delicious. No, I agree. No, I agree with your broader point too. And to even put some names on it, I don't want to linger on this, but it's like, if you told me like, we're going to get Zach Gallen, I'm excited. If you told me Amai is the guy, I'm excited. If it's Cease is the guy, I'm excited. If it's, Michael King, I'm excited. These are all different types and tiers.
Cabrera, Ryan, Gore.
Right. There's a lot of guys, but here's one.
Valdez, Ranger Suarez.
You could go on forever. Yeah, there's a lot. But here's one that I thought was really interesting and odd. I was reading Jesse Rogers' latest at ESPN, which is a must read. I posted about it at Bleacher Nation, so you can go read about the interesting parts in my reaction to some of it. But he pulled 16 executives, asking them questions about the offseason, trying to figure out what they think is going to happen. And one executive who we don't know, said this, and I'm preempting this with, I think this is kind of nuts and whatever, but I do want to point out some of the reasons that I'm bringing it up to you in the first place. And that is this quote. The question was basically, what is, a surprising top trade candidate of the winter besides Tariq Skubal? Quote, sleeper name, Tyler Glasnow, said one voter. Feels like the Dodgers can go to Ohtani, Yamamoto, Blake Snell, Roki Sasaki, Amit Sheehan, and others, and use Glasnow on the trade market to cover up holes. Okay. I mean, I doubt it. I don't think they're going to trade Tyler Glasnow and whatever. But, the flip side of this is that the Dodgers and Cubs have been frequent trade partners over the last few years. The Cubs have demonstrated some very serious interest in adding a top of the rotation starter like Glasnow is, and he is available via trade, which is another route that they have considered going. And then most importantly, and the reason that I'm bringing this up at all, otherwise I would have ignored it completely, is that the Cubs were very publicly rumored to be interested in Tyler Glasnow before he was traded to the Dodgers. And I think that those, rumors, it's that is something I come back to a lot. Like when it comes to Alex Bregman, like if the Cubs front office has at any point demonstrated a willingness to trade for a player or sign a player, there's something in the profile of that player that they like, because they don't make these decisions sort of emotionally or in the heat of the moment. They are like, nope, this guy checks enough boxes for XYZ reason. And so I'm guessing Glasnow is and will be one of those guys that they like in isolation. Now, do I think a trade's likely? No. But do you have any reaction to that being thrown out there by an executive?
Well, I think I would question the context that executive is thinking about to suggest that, like, is that informed by some knowledge, or is that just sort of like, I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, the Dodgers have a bunch of starting pitching. They could probably, because, let's remember, this is a guy that the Dodgers acquired and then immediately extended on what was at the time a pretty darn pricey deal for a dude who had thrown
still has $30 million in each of the next 2 years.
Yeah. Thrown very few innings before that deal. And frankly, kind of since, right? He's maxed out at something like 20 starts with the Dodgers a couple of years ago. And then this year he only pitched like half a season. Yep. While, Glasnow, I don't know how detailed we want to get on him. I was a little lukewarm on him as a target for the Cubs because he was one of these guys who was way more stuff than production. You watch
Oh
him.
yeah,
You're like,
you hate him and Dylan Cease. You
and
hate
Dylan Cease,
stuff.
I know. I hate
Brett is
stuff.
just auditioning for Jed Hoyer.
Though, if you follow like my accounts very closely, you will see me. I wouldn't say I'm a hater of like Stuff Plus and the pitch.
No,
the
you
pitch
are.
modeling
It's
metrics.
okay. It's
Compared to
fine.
most people, I totally
Yeah.
a hater, I guess. I just have found repeatedly that there is this real disconnect between what the models like in pitch shapes and some types of pitchers' performance. Like I've told this a million times. I mean, Justin Steele is what set this off for me about 5 years ago when these models were starting to get hot. And like I get that in the aggregate, this is what you want a four-seamer to look like. This is what you want. I get that. But if your model is saying that Justin Steele has a crappy four-seamer, then your model is not useful for evaluating a pitcher like Justin Steele, because we know if you talk to any batter, Justin Steele's four-seamer is amazing, and it is a pain in the ass to try to hit. And same thing with Kate Horton's shape. And in fact, I'm a little biased on this because it's clear that the models don't love cut ride fastballs, which is as much as the Cubs do. And the Cubs love cut ride fastballs. And we've seen they aren't whiff pitches, so maybe that's why the models don't love them, but they're really hard to square up. And so anyway.
Well, no. This is good because I actually want to I've been wanting to talk to you about this. I want to linger on it for 1 second because I have an interesting, to me, nuanced point or revelation that I uncovered as you were bringing this up multiple times over the last couple of years. And it's that at first, when I started seeing you make this point, I was thinking, well, Brett, it's not, I think you're, thinking about this wrong. It's not that Stuff Plus is bad. It's that it's like batting average. Let's say it in isolation, it can't be the thing, but I don't believe this anymore. I'm just walking you through my thought process. It's like, but you just use it as a piece of the puzzle to evaluate a pitcher. And for like a minute, I was convinced by that. But then as you sort of explain some of the points you just got into over the years, I'm realizing that no, it's not just that. It's that it literally is also incorrect at evaluating the effectiveness of a certain pitch based on qualities that it thinks are
it'd be
ideal. So
like
it's
a stat
not
that says Nico Horner hit 220 last year. It's like, but wait a minute. He didn't hit 220. He hit almost 300. And listen, it's not like it's not without use. I think that there's something to the idea that like it can uncover guys who maybe do have good movement, good shapes, good velo, good whatever, and haven't put it together for some reason. Okay. But where I get a little, I don't know, I don't pretend to know more than the especially in org people who use these models. Like they know what they're doing. But for guys like Glasnow, guys like it's a lot of these former
Tyler Chatwood.
Well, I mean, Chris Archer was another one. Like there's a bunch of these guys who their stuff and their pitch quality is evaluated by everyone who evaluates pitches as like very good. And you watch them and you're like, okay, yeah, I can see that. This is some nasty looking stuff. And yet they get hit and they get a lot of strikeouts and they keep a lot of runs off the board that way. But when they get hit hard. And I just have trouble squaring that sometimes with trying to evaluate a pitcher's sort of future production and value, especially when you have a long track record of Glasnow, which I don't know, I have to go and look at it, but like he's been really good, but not anywhere close to the way his sort of pitches are evaluated on skill. And that's even setting aside the health stuff. And so that's why I was a little lukewarm on him as a trade target. Like it felt like you're expecting the results at some point to catch up with your evaluation of the pitches, and just, it might not happen after 10 years. Now the flip side example there is who's the guy that the Padres signed, and he was great this year. Finally, after 10 years, he was another former Rays guy.
Oh yeah. And he had a qualifying offer. I remember exactly what you're talking about.
Come on, the Cubs faced him like 3 times this year. Oh, this is the problem with a live recording of a pod. Anyway,
then there's people listening, screaming his name into their car radio.
Yeah, I mean they literally faced him in the wild card series. Yes, we know who he is. Just name is eluding.
I can't think of it.
But anyway, Yeah, because I keep wanting to say Eflin, and it's not.
I keep wanting to say
It's the
Adrian
other guy.
Morejon, and that's not it either.
But anyway, point is, he finally did. He got to an org where they figured out how to optimize what he was doing, and the results did finally follow at 32 or whatever. So I don't know. I understand that a lot of this is backwards thinking. You want good velo, you want good stuff. I don't want to be too polluted by the idea that the Cubs have found success with contact managers for so long. But
wait, not Nick Pivetta, right?
Yeah, Pivetta. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what
Pivetta.
it is.
I just don't want to become beholden to the idea that, that Cade Horton can't be good next year because his pitch quality, according to these evaluative metrics, is not great. It's like, come on. I'm way more likely to predict success for him next year than, pick a guy with a 5+ ERA who's like has good, well, I don't know, but he's got good movement on the whatever. It's like, yeah, I think there's more to it than that. So anyway, that's
no, but so where we want to sort of take this conversation is into, while we don't think a trade for Tyler Glasnow is particularly likely for any team, let alone the Cubs, there are some other, pitchers that have been on the Cubs radar for a year. One guy in particular is someone that Bruce Devine recently brought up, and that's Sandy Alcantara. You wrote about it this morning. I see a lot of people on the interwebs being mystifyingly lukewarm on Sandy Alcantara. I am well aware of his stats from the first half of the season, but I feel like everyone is excluding the context of those numbers, like almost categorically. And I also think that this is almost a funny butt up against the opposite of the conversation we were just making, because in a lot of ways he does have great stuff and maybe the results weren't, but they did get there and he has demonstrated it in the past. So talk a little Sandy Alcantara for me. I'll get into the money thing later, but I want to know why people should be excited about the possibility of trading for him if he does become a Cubs target once again.
Now, some of this, so I really like it. Some of this is probably me, wanting to feel right about as trade season played out and his results got worse and worse. And people started to turn on the idea of acquiring him. I thought at the time, I'm like, yeah, but that just means the price is down. And as he gets further from Tommy John and he gets right, you might get a guy who joins a new team, gets in a pennant race, and then really turns it on and locks it in. So I really liked the idea of acquiring him. I understand why the Marlins didn't ultimately trade him, because the price would not have been great at the time. And then, of course, Alcantara did go on to, in the second half, he was fantastic. He pitched as well as he has in for at least an 8-start stretch as he has in his career, including the Cy Young year. Excuse me. And so I still very much like him as a target for the Cubs. I think what's interesting and what I suspect people misapprehend about his ability is he's never been like a huge strikeout guy. You watch him and he's got the premium velocity. He has good pitches, but he's actually more of a control contact managing type, which sound from other people would sound like a knock. For me, when you're talking about a dude who, even if it's only a slightly above average strikeout rate, doesn't walk anyone, gets ground balls at like a 50% clip, and critically averages 6-7+ innings per start. Like, people sleep on what the value is there, what that can do for your bullpen, what that can do for your other starters that you don't have to push and stretch because he's eaten up more innings. I just think there's enormous potential value there if you believe he got right there in the second half. And, it would not be hard. The price would not be inconsequential in trade. It would probably be significant. But
I want to pause you there, because that's the next part I wanted to talk about. And before you get into the rest of it, Sandy Alcantara's not making small money. Okay. Next year he's making $17.3 million, and then has got a $21 million club option in 2027. And the CBA hit is less, although it would correct up for the Cubs
For
if
the
they
option,
traded
yeah.
for him, and for the option. I think
Oh,
both
sure.
reasons.
Both
right?
would happen. Yes, both would happen.
So it's only 11.2 for the Marlins, but it would probably be around 17 to
Well, it'd be
19
two
million.
Different years. Basically, two 1-year contracts.
1 years. Yeah, you're right. So anyway, that is it would be more. So that's real money. Okay, so that has to eat into it a little bit. Like, I feel like there's a difference between what his trade cost should be and what it should be for someone now on both sides. Ira Cabrera, who's younger and cheaper, or cost controlled for longer, and it's like a little bit more, or like a Joe Ryan, who's more established, so who might also still cost some money in arbitration and whatnot, but is more established than Alcantara is at the present moment. So
Yeah.
isn't there, like, aren't we threading the needle a little bit? Like, should it really be so significant to acquire him?
Well, I mean, I think you're correct that it would be less than Joe Ryan, but we got a great example this week of what the price is on front half starting pitchers with Sonny Gray going to the Red Sox. Now, he's essentially costing $40 million for 1 year. Now the Cardinals are paying half of that, so pretty close to what Alcantara's making. And Gray had no trade rights, which theoretically limited the market further. And yet the Cardinals were able to pull a back end top 100 fringy pitching prospect in Brandon Clark, and then a guy who was close to that. I think he's graduated now in Richard Fitz. Now there's warts there and whatever. Like, I'm not going to dissect these prospects like I know anything about the Red Sox system and the Cardinals, ability to develop guys. But the point is, my understanding is that's two very legitimate pieces that they got for 1 year of Sonny Gray at $20 million. And we're talking about Alcantara at 1 year, a little less than that. And I think a very valuable club option for that second year.
Yeah.
It's not, it's only a single year commitment at $21 million. If he's good next year, that's pretty great to have.
I mean, even if he's not, it's less than the qualifying offer.
Yeah.
so
yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about, and I'm picking this name because he was we know he was involved in the talks last year with the Marlins. I think you're talking about Owen Casey plus for Alcantara.
And I can see that, I guess, but I guess what I am thinking is I'm understanding of the fact that Owen Casey that it would be Owen Casey plus, but I guess what I'm saying is the plus shouldn't be, obviously it won't be Jackson Wiggins. Like it, yeah. Right? Like it's,
I would say no to that one.
That's what I mean.
I would not, I wouldn't trade them straight up.
Right. So, well, I mean, I know. And so I guess my point is maybe it's just a matter of, subjectivity perspective of what we're saying when we say that. It's like, yeah, Owen Casey and then another piece, but not, again, it's not another like piece close to as valuable, right? Like I just can't see that being the case.
No, and especially because you look at, so that was in the talks for Jesus Luzardo, who there was some injury risk there. Even before what actually scuttled the deal, there was known to be some injury risk. Yeah. But like, he was also 2 years of control, much cheaper than Alcantara, and just as much upside, which he ultimately showed with the Phillies.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I think, I don't want to put too much into one trade. That being the Sonny Gray trade, that I am not an expert in Red Sox prospects, so there could be issues there.
I mean,
it's just that was a lot. It was a lot more than I thought they could get.
Yeah, maybe Craig Breslow. It feels to me like he's being pushed. Okay, one of two things is happening. Craig Breslow was so limited in what he was able to do from what he wanted to do when he was with the Cubs, or Red Sox ownership is like, nope, go get aggressive, get some guys. This is like, it is pretty hard to square. He is out there doing stuff, and I'm not jealous or whatever. I love Craig. I think Craig Breslow was an incredible piece of the Cubs front office, and there's a reason he got the job he got in one of the biggest franchises in sports. And so that's all whatever. But like getting Crochet and Sonny Gray and Bregman. Like he's out there moving and grooving, trading, what's his name, to the Giants. Like he's doing the types of things that like the Cubs, I'm not saying succeed or not, but very rarely do things that high profile. They've done a bunch in his short time there.
Yeah. And the Red Sox have, Meyer and Roman Anthony and on the pitching side, a couple other guys that are like right there ready to break out, or Christian Campbell in the infield and Rafaela in the outfield. Like they have it is understandable to me why they would be like really pedal down right now. And so maybe that's a factor too, where they're
had PCA and Michael Busch and Cade Horton.
Listen,
those are all legit prospects that
you are not. That's why we keep talking, especially about starting pitchers, where it's like, you don't have to convince me that when you look at this roster of Cubs and the young positional guys coming up, that it's like, now is the time to push really aggressively for a front half starting pitcher.
How many times can we say that? I know
there's not a team. There's not a team in baseball. Yeah. There's not a team in baseball that would benefit more. I hand up. I think this is true. There is not a team in baseball that would benefit more. There might be some who benefit as much, but not a one would benefit more from adding a front third starting pitcher than the 2026 Cubs. There's not one. Like it's such a boost to an area that can so obviously be boosted. Whereas you've got the other half of the roster is just not as able, except maybe the bullpen, which maybe feeds into the idea of why they went after Maton and why they're still potentially involved in some back end names.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you want to switch over to the transaction corner? That was a pretty good chat on that stuff. I do think something's going to happen. And I gather, by the way, I read a lot. I know you do too. And anyone listening to this podcast is probably in the same boat, but read a lot of rumor articles and reports and watch a lot of stupid MLB Network clips with John Morosi and Steve Phillips and whatever to get a sense of what's going on. It does feel like it's going to be an active winter meetings this year. I'm getting that sense that it's like, no, things are going to move. And I think a little bit of that is, the reports of what people are saying, sure, but also the sense of the market we are getting from guys like Shane Bieber, Jack Flaherty, Shota Imanaga, like people like kind of making decisions quickly on some of these bigger players. And it's like, maybe there will be some like, no, we're not sitting around this year for teams and front offices to start getting even more spooked about what's coming in 2027. So I do think it could be an exciting winter meetings this year. So this week's transaction corner, transaction corner coming to you right now. I'm trying to find my copy. Felco is brought to you by Felco, the home renewal experts. Bleacher Nation is proud to partner with Felco. For almost 50 years, Felco has been transforming Chicagoland homes with their windows, siding, doors, and roofing. Felco is family-owned and prides themselves in delighting their customers. With products made in the U.S. and designed specifically for the Midwest, Felco offers the perfect balance of beauty and energy efficiency. Brett, there was a random rumor last week.
Random. And I think this matters, by the way, to underscore how random it was. It was Patrick Mooney, right? It was Mooney?
No, Rosenthal.
No, not that one.
Oh.
Helsley's come up multiple times. There was a Mooney mention in an article about the Kyle Tucker trade in evaluating, how do we feel about...
We're talking about Rev, not Helsley.
Oh,
we changed this. Brett was teeing up a totally different guy.
I'll end it there. Yeah, there's a rumor about Ryan Helsley. Check it out.
Yeah,
you can read it. Yeah.
There is. I wrote it up. Ryan Helsley's another interesting guy. The one we were going to talk about, remember we switched because we want to move off of pitching is, but we can do this a similar tee up is that at the end of the offseason, also in an article, it was Bob Nightingale. That's who it was, who had one of his rumor dumps. And he was like, yeah, the Cubs are going to be interested in a right fielder, an outfielder. And we were like, what? That sort of came out of nowhere to us. It's not like it's absurd. They're losing a right fielder. So sure. But with Owen Casey and Seiya Suzuki plus Moises Ballesteros also able to play DH, it doesn't seem like an obvious thing to do if you're not going to retain someone of Kyle
certainly
Tucker's
for
caliber.
Like a starter caliber,
right. Unless you go trade for Fernando Tatis Jr. or sign Kyle Tucker, which changes everything. I really want them to trade for Tatis. But
I was telling someone else, I would become the biggest PED apologist ever.
Me too.
I'd be actually, let's talk about the science of what it really does and doesn't do.
Yep. Same thing. I'm like with cork bats. I'm like, technically cork bats actually make you hit it not as far. So Sosa wasn't really cheating. He's making it harder on himself. I do the same thing now in reverse. The Wilson Contreras. I'm like, this guy's a joke.
Yeah.
What kind of attitude is that?
Who acts like that? Come on.
I hate this guy. So even though when he was on the Cubs, I was like, man, everyone's being babies. Wilson's just out there competing. Like, what's their problem? So anyway, there was that random outfield rumor. And then Ken Rosenthal, who is one of, two guys whose word nationally I take more seriously than a lot of others. Jeff Passan being the other. Every sport has their 1-2 punch of national transaction and rumor reporters where you're like, no, when this guy says something, it means a little bit more than when even someone excellent who gets a lot of rumors, John Heyman, he's more like in the business of rumor mongering. Ken Rosenthal is like not.
When Michael Cerami tweets, hey, have you thought about checking out this guy for the Cubs? Maybe this guy's interesting. If you see that one, I'm thinking you can take that one to the bank.
Yeah, that's fun to do. So anyway, Ken Rosenthal had like a Q&A section of one of his podcasts, and someone asked about a really smart Cubs fan. I don't know who this was, but it was a great pick and a great thought about the Cubs going out and targeting a right-handed hitting. So an outfielder who can hit from the right side, hit lefties well, in free agency to sort of pair with some of the options the Cubs have in house, there's a lot of lefty outfielders, Owen Casey, PCA, Ian Happ, and then Moises Ballesteros is a DH, but it kind of feeds into that conversation. And so one of the players that person suggested was Rob Refsnyder. And here's what Ken Rosenthal had to say. I'll just read the quote. Actually, that's a really good thought because the Cubs are breaking in Owen Casey, a guy who isn't established yet. You can certainly see quote, Refsnyder appealing to them. Refsnyder crushes lefties. We know that. And as I mentioned early on, the availability of right-handed hitting outfielders is not great. Refsnyder is actually one of the better ones available. Though he's not a regular player, he's a platoon player. So yes, I can definitely see that particular thing kind of happening with the Cubs. I can see them being interested in Rob Refsnyder in the exact scenario you mentioned. Before I turn it over to you, let me just read you these stats because he's as good of a lefty hitter as any platoon hitter is going to be. 2025, he slashed 302, 399, 560, which is a 159 WRC plus. 2024, he slashed 302, 393, 548, which is right around the same place. And for his career and almost 800 plate appearances, he's got a 129 rated runs created plus. So he is like, no, he hits lefties. It's not a fluke. It's consistent. He's been at his best the last 2 years. If there was a way to add an outfielder or to improve the offense by way of platooning some guys, a guy like Rob Refsnyder makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the knocks would be he'll be 35, I think, and you don't know when that bat speed's going to go, and particularly when it's a really niche skill set. You also, though the numbers don't back this up, so I almost shouldn't even say it, but you wonder about, he's playing the last couple of years when he was really good in a ballpark that is unique for handedness, right? Like the lefties, right? It plays a very different way for each. But he was monster at home this past year, but then a monster on the road the year before. So probably not a lot of signal there. I think that my biggest concern would be how much of a value add that is to the 2026 Cubs compared to other teams that would be in on him, given the limited availability of these right-handed mashing corner outfielders in this year's market. Because the price tag.
Don't you see like how he can, he could theoretically, if the biggest flaw with him is that he can't really play center. If he could also play a little bit of center, it would be honestly such a no-brainer to me, because then all three outfielders could platoon with him on any given day. Even Happ, who's a switch hitter, but much better as a lefty than a righty.
And I'm going to say the stupid thing because he's on the 40 man. The the Cubs have a right-handed hitting
I
outfielder who
know.
can play center field. He actually play a very good center field
Yeah.
and could back up all 3 spots. And of course, that's Kevin Alcantara. But he's not
Probably worth
established.
it.
He's not,
You know.
and you don't know, right? Like if a young guy is only playing twice a week, maybe at most, like, is he actually going to contribute at a meaningful level? Certainly not compared to a Ref Snyder who's done it for several years now. I think, we saw the Cubs did not produce against left-handed pitching as well as we would have liked to have seen. I think I would hope that we would see continued steps forward from Michael Busch and from PCA against lefties that could neutralize some of that. And
Yeah, but
just,
Kyle Tucker was good at hitting lefties
yeah,
as a lefty,
true,
and he's gone. And
true,
Owen Casey is going to be the primary replacement there,
true,
who presumably won't be as good as Kyle
true.
Tucker.
We don't know, and I don't love the idea of signing a Ref Snyder because you are already planning like, oh, the right field, that's going to be a Casey Ref Snyder platoon. Done. Everything, that means Seiya is going to DH, and that means Moises is going to what? I don't know. I don't
Couldn't Ref
love
Snyder
that.
be more of a bench player who sometimes does that?
Sure. And you look at it that way, you could say, well, he's replacing Justin Turner. And,
Right. It's a different spot.
I would be right. And Justin Turner, by contrast, was a split neutral guy for his career. And so he was not really a lefty mashing guy. So I like it. I just think that I wonder about the price tag, which, we know all the stuff, hate to blah, 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 blah. I kind of wish the Cubs still had Christian Franklin because he was just added to the Nationals 40-man, another right-handed hitting outfielder who hits lefties very well and plays all 3 spots. Again, you don't know that he would immediately step forward and be that guy, but it'd be nice to have some internal options in addition.
I will support I went and looked because I was inclined to say, I actually think the Alcantara part of it doesn't matter at all because let him continue developing in AAA. But you can't. He's out of options. Kevin Alcantara has no options remaining.
No, I think he's eligible for a 4th option year, which they just,
as of now,
it may not
0.
Yeah, but I think that those don't get awarded until January or so.
Okay.
So
that changes it though, because he's a guy that he's young enough with enough upside that I would be fine with him hanging back until needed and letting a guy like Ref Snyder being like, no, next year is about, squeezing out an extra half a win or a win from your bench player that maybe it's more likely to come from Ref Snyder than Alcantara, even though Alcantara over the next 5 years, we hope, vastly outperforms. So it's like, in terms of just impacting next season, Ref Snyder might be like the way to do it. I'm kind of into it. I kind of like it.
I tell you, I'm certainly not opposed. If it has no impact whatsoever on what the Cubs do in the rotation, financially speaking, then yeah, I'm all on board. I think what you might be choosing among are like the third base options and deciding like, is Shaw going to be on your bench or is Ref Snyder going to be on your bench? And are you going to go for Okamoto or are you not?
That's fair.
And hard to know what the Cubs are thinking on that front. And I think if they're playing it more conservative, which seems fair on the positional side, I might not love it. It might not be exciting, but it's fair. Then yeah, you might look at a Ref Snyder and be like, that's actually the best thing that they can do on the positional
that's
side.
Part of what's influencing what I'm saying a little bit is like, I'm losing. I have plenty of faith that they're going to get a big starting pitcher, and I believe that they will try to sign another quality free agent reliever. But on the positional side, I have a hard. I don't hear a lot or see a lot of like, oh yeah, Cubs are talking about Alex Bregman again, or we talked about how Murakami does not feel like a fit at all. Okamoto does. I mean, there's a reason that it could make sense, but he's likely to have a lot of really great suitors and probably from teams that have absolutely no competition to start at a position or
at first base. Right. Like, that have,
third, first and DH all kind of have options for the Cubs. Right. So
I'll tell you what, though, this conversation and the Ref Snyder rumor, again, you can read Michael's full take on it at BN, does have me more interested in looking at that reserve outfield market and sort of, I wonder if it's going to put the Cubs in the market for, a quad A type minor league signing who
Yeah,
can
they'll
play
get
out the
something
spots,
like that.
because you're going to need those reserves anyway, because you can't assume that everybody's going to be healthy all year. And so, yeah, I just wonder who else might be out there that's kind of interesting, because it's a limited skill set that you're looking for, especially if you don't need him to cover center field. You're just talking about a corner outfielder who hits lefties. Like, that's
Now,
actually
well,
doable.
I want to put a pin in Refsnyder, but before we end the pod, I'm going to throw one more curveball I forgot to mention that I was going to at you. So when I read Ken Rosenthal's this line specifically that said Refsnyder is actually one of the better right-handed hitting outfielders available, I mean, that's crazy, because how is he one of the better? Well, the Cubs have a 1-year right-handed hitting Seiya Suzuki, who I do not think they should trade. I do not want them to trade by any means, but was discussed in multiple trade rumors last offseason, to the point that the Cubs were approaching Suzuki and his agent to talk about the teams that he would accept trades to. So is it possible that the Cubs have like a uniquely valuable asset on their hands? Like, teams want a right-handed hitting outfielder, and the Seiya Suzuki might be, extra, like outsized value to what they might get by just starting him, especially if they have one of two things: Owen Casey and Ballesteros being options, and also then the opportunity to go do something else that we're not foreseeing with the money and positional versatility that you gain otherwise. So is there something that, is that completely crazy?
A different organization, you might be say, that's like, dude, that's what a smart org would do. It's a guy who you can definitely use for 26, but you might be able to replace internally, and you can restock in some other ways by doing it. Cubs have just never done that.
No,
I can't think of a time in a competitive window where they've intentionally traded away a guy they could use for future value. Like, I don't think they've ever.
It works for the Brewers every year.
There's lots of clubs that do it. And the
you
Dodgers
have to be ready
have
to
done
go.
it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a big difference between the Brewers and the Dodgers, though, too.
Right.
Dodgers do it, and then they go backfill with money and do stuff.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Which is what the Cubs should do.
Yeah, they would have to go get a bat. They would have to figure out a way to get a bat. You might do it if you had Okamoto lined up, for example.
Yeah.
You might be like,
okay. Yeah.
So I think it's not. I doubt it becomes a story this offseason. And I think, like you, I wouldn't advocate for it, because I like Seiya's bat in this lineup for 2026. But
especially because he's right-handed, for what it's worth, because PCA and Bush and Happ are kind of your other hitters.
But have those conversations. If there's some team out there that's like that Seiya would go to, that's gonna just knock you over with a huge return, well, worth considering, I guess.
Let's find out, who misses out on Bellinger and Tucker. Lefties, but right fielders who are, big bats theoretically. So yeah. All right. You want to close this down?
Yeah. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to Ankin Law for their support of this pod. It's 3126 million injury law made personal. Ankin Law. Check them out. And thank you to everyone for their continued support of this pod here on Thanksgiving Eve. I hope everyone has a safe and healthy and stuffing filled day. And we'll be back at you next week. It's the BN Cubs podcast. I'm Brett Taylor. That's Michael Cerami. Read our stuff at Bleacher Nation, and we'll catch you on the flip side. All right, goodbye.